Hey guys, this is Sweet, and in today's video I have a 9.1 Necrolord Feral guide for you. Now, some of the guides that I've seen on the internet talk about the talents, they talk about the conduits, but Feral is very confusing at times. It has a lot of buttons. So in this guide, I'm going to go through all that stuff, the talents, the conduits, all that shit, but I really want to talk about some of the key abilities, when to use them, and just give you a little bit of a insight on actually how to play the class. So to talk about the basic overall thing that you want to be doing with the Feral is a class that is based around dots. You want to keep your bleeds up. These are your damage over time effects, and they are going to be the bulk of your damage. Paired with our offensive abilities like Tiger's Fury, which will basically give us 20% more damage. I think it's 15% baseline, but it's 20% for me with my conduit. Feral Frenzy, Berserk, and Adaptive Swarm, we can put out massive amounts of pressure using our dots, which is really good because sometimes we have to spend a lot of time in bear form. And as long as we can keep our dots up, we still have our damage and we're still doing full damage the entire time, basically, besides, using our failure abilities. So I'm just going to go through my action bars and I'm going to talk about a few things defensively. Incapacitating Roar. So Incapacitating Roar is not baseline for Feral. It is given to us through Guardian Affinity. Now, it is a very key ability, which is going to make Guardian Affinity the reason that it's going to pretty much, along with Frenzy Regen, be the reason that we auto-lock Guardian Affinity in it all the time. In 9.1, there was an introduction to the game of the Maledict Trinket, which is this one here. And basically what it does, it puts a massive dot on and a massive healing absorb effect. Now, we have a few ways that we can break it. We can use Incapacitating Roar. If you're Night Elf, you can Shadow Meld it, which doesn't help your teammates. Taurens can War Stomp it, but it can't be interrupted. So Incapacitating Roar is the main one that we're going to be using to stop it. In 9.0, you could really play around with these talents. You could, swap between Guardian, you could swap between Resto, but it's pretty much mandatory now to be taking Guardian so that you have Incapacitating Roar. One thing I will mention is that Incapacitating Roar DRs Hunter's Trap. Now, when you're playing a Feral Druid in 9.1, your composition of choice is most likely going to be jungle. So you need to make sure that you are avoiding hitting the enemy healer with Incapacitating Roar, or you are going to delay the go. Of course, if there's no other way you can stop a healer from shackling, use it, but just keep in mind that you are going to probably make the hunters a little bit angry. Now, Cyclone. Cyclone is one of our key abilities. It's not something that you can cast in cat form. You do have to leave cat form to cast this, but it is probably the best CC in the game. So 1.5 second cast, it will make the target invulnerable. They can't be dispelled. It is a very, very solid CC. Cyclone is something that you should be using to stop goes, to make sure that your healer stays alive. I find myself mostly casting Cyclone when I have people attacking my healers, or once I have all my dots up and I just want to kind of slow the pace of the game down a little bit for their team. So Cyclone can be used in many ways. It can be used offensively, it can be used defensively. For example, if a Mistweaver uses their bubble on a target and they're at 20%, you're not going to break through that bubble. So what you might like to do is use Cyclone, cast 3 Cyclones on the person who has the bubble, at which point the bubble will then expire and you can swap the clone to the healer so that you can go back to killing the guy who was at 20%. So there's lots of ways you can use Cyclone. Very, very good spell. Please do not overlook it. It is going to be one of the key parts of your gameplay. Next, defensively, we are going to talk about Survival Instincts. So Survival Instincts is our major defensive. Reduces all damage you take by 50% for 6 seconds. This is our major defensive. You do not want to waste it. Okay? If you see a ret popping wings but they haven't hodged you yet, you could opt to use Survival Instincts rather than wasting your Bark Skin, because Bark Skin can be used in stuns. Okay, if you're versing a team that's heavy with stuns, what you don't want to do is pop Bark Skin if you're not CC'd, if you're not stunned already, because once you do get stuck in that stun eventually, you are going to take a lot of damage because you can't use survival instincts in stuns. So if you're playing Druid, you're probably playing one of two races. You are either playing Tauren or Night Elf if you are Alliance. War Stomp is just an AoE stun. It lasts for 2 seconds. Really good for stopping Maledict trinkets, and it is really good for getting cyclones because you can go up to a target, use War Stomp, and then cyclone it off the War Stomp. Okay, so really good way to land CC. I will often, if I get a Predator Swiftness proc, go up to a target, War Stomp it, cast a clone, and then root the other guy, which is a really good way to peel as a Feral Druid. Stampeding Roar is basically just a speed boost for you and your team. If you're in cat form already, it will roar the team in cat form. If you're in human form, it'll take you into bear form. Yeah. Moving on. I'm going to talk about Thorns a little bit later. Yep. Moonfire is one of our main damage abilities. You know, actually, I'm gonna categorize this into defensives first, and then I'll talk about offensive stuff. So forget I said anything about that. Next up, we are going to talk about Bark Skin. Okay, so Bark Skin is a 20% damage reduction. It is usable while stunned, frozen, incapped, feared, asleep, and you can use it in any shapeshift form. It is not the most powerful ability, but when you're stuck in a stun, it really does help. It's on quite a short cooldown, and it works really nicely with against rogue teams. Generally, what I'll do is, like, let's say if I'm versing an RMP, the first go, I will Bark Skin. The second go, I won't have Bark Skin, so I'll be extra cautious. I'll be getting into bear right before the stun hits, which you should probably do anyway. But I'll be extra cautious in the second go, and then on the third go, I know that I have Bark Skin back. So if I do get caught in cat form, it's not the worst thing in the world, but ideally, you do want to get into any, you want to try and be in bear form before any stun hits. So the other thing we're going to talk about is Fleshcraft, which is the Necrolord's signature ability. What it does, it puts a shield on you for 40% of your maximum health. It lasts for 2 minutes. While channeling, your damage taken is reduced by 20%. You will get a small heal from it as well with our conduit tree. And if you finish channeling the cast, you will be able to get 2 seconds of CC immunity after the cast is finished. So really nice if, for example, a mage has rung around you and you have no way to get out of the ring, you could channel a full Fleshcraft and then just walk straight through the ring. So stuff like that, it's really good for. Now, when you're landing, trying to get a Fleshcraft in the middle of arena, Fleshcraft is generally a priority interrupt for most people. They realize that it's a lot of damage to break through, so they try to interrupt it. Generally, what I will do is if I have a team on me and I'm at, 50% or more health, I'll generally go for a Cyclone because everyone always just tries to kick Cyclone. And then after they've kicked the Cyclone, I will enter bear form and then cast my Fleshcraft. Now, the reason that I cast my Fleshcraft in bear form is because bear form gives you increased stamina by 25%, so it takes me up to 80,000, which gives me a 47.2k absorb shield. So where possible, always try to channel your Fleshcraft while you're in bear. It's going to give you the most stamina. All right, now let's get on to our key damage abilities. So Rake is basically our slow. It is also a stun when used from stealth, and it's one of our main dots. The other dots that we have is a Moonfire. So Moonfire is granted to us in cat form by the Lunar Inspiration talent, and then we also have Rip. So those are the 3 dots that we are always keeping up. We also have a few filler abilities, which would be Shred and Brutal Slash. So those are what generate our combo points. Generally, we're always going to be playing Brutal Slash, which replaces Swipe. And we use Swipe generally when we're trying to build combo points quickly, because the global cooldown on Brutal Slash is a lot lower, the energy cost is lower, and it also deals a little bit more damage. So where possible, you will be using Brutal Slash to build your combo points. Things to keep in mind with Brutal Slash though, however, Brutal Slash will hit targets behind you, okay? So if you Brutal Slash and you're near an enemy who's CC'd, it will break it, okay? So you need to be very careful of that. You need to, like, if the guy over here is CC'd, you're fine to Brutal Slash, okay? But if you were over here and you tried to use it, you would break that CC. So just be careful. That's when you would swap over to Shred to build your combo points. Now, combo points are pretty much what we operate off. We operate off energy, we operate off combo points. There are a few ways to spend our combo points. The first one is rip. So generally you always want to try and get a 5-point rip up. And the reason you always want to get a 5-point rip up, or any 5-point finisher for that matter, is predatory swiftness. So your finishing moves have a 20% chance per combo point to make your next regrowth or entangling roots instant, free, and castable in all forms. So by doing a 5-point combo finisher, we will always get a predator swiftness, which means that we can do a free regrowth or a free entangling roots, which is going to be extremely good because feral off healing it's really epic. So to recap, always want to keep up rip. We always want to keep Moonfire up, and then we want to use Brutal Slash to build up enough points to get a 5-point rip up. Okay, Rake, Moonfire, Rip, always keep them up. That's the first thing you need to know. The next thing you need to know is our kind of damage modifier ability, Tiger's Fury. So Tiger's Fury is a very strong ability. It just basically gives us flat damage for the duration of our abilities. And we will generally be using this either with a big finisher, so like a big bite or a big rip. And we always want to make sure that we have it for Feral Frenzy. If you don't have Tiger's Fury, do not use Feral Frenzy. It is better to wait. Combining these things together, so Tiger's Fury, Feral Frenzy, and Adaptive Swarm must always be used together. Adaptive Swarm is our Necrolord ability, which will give us a 35% increase to periodic abilities. Now, this works with all of your dots, but it also works with the tick from bleeding from Feral Frenzy. Feral Frenzy can crit up to 7 to 8k with a single tick, so it is very important that you get that modifier up for Feral Frenzy. Yeah, let's talk about a standard damage rotation or opener. Now, there are two ways to do things. You can either commit everything in one go, or you could do what I like to do, which is break things up. So the first go, I'll use Tiger's Fury along with Feral Frenzy, and then the second go, I will use Tiger's Fury with Berserk. And then for the third go, I'll have Tiger's Fury and Frenzy back up again. Okay, so it's just a really good way to keep damage consistent throughout the whole thing. If I wanted to all in someone, I could, but Necrolord Feral is not really a class that is all in. Okay, you're not going to one-shot someone. You could outplay someone and drop them, but if they answer with cooldowns, they're probably going to live. What we have is a lot of consistent damage, and we have a lot of defensive. So let's talk about an opener. So first up, we're going to cast a Rake. We're then going to Moonfire, Brutal Slash until we get 5 points, and then we are going to Rip. After that, you're going to get Adaptive Swarm up, Feral Frenzy, and then you could either finish the Feral Frenzy with Ferocious Bite or with a Maim. I forgot to mention Feral Frenzy does give you 5 combo points, so it's similar to Rogue's Mark for Death. And what you do there is really up to you. If you're opening from stealth, however, and you are using your Rake, it will DR the stun if you try to use Maim at the end. Okay, so Maim is our kidney shot type ability. If you want to talk in rogue terms, because most people know rogue terms pretty well. I generally always follow that finisher up with Ferocious Bite. I don't see any point in I mean, there are some situations where I'll do the DR stun, but normally it is not going to be worth it. The second and the third time, I will generally have a go with either bash or maim once that rake stun DR has finished. Talking about our stuns, I'm going to talk about when to use which stun. So maim has a shorter GCD than bash does, and it lasts a little bit longer. So maim at 5 points will stun for 5 seconds, bash will stun for 4 seconds, and it has a longer GCD. So generally I'll use bash if I'm using on a second target, and I'll usually maim on the target that I'm trying to kill. So if let's say I'm setting up for my hunter, I'll bash the healer so that he can trap off, and then I will maim the main target for the longest stun and the reduced GCD so I can be getting damage going faster. I will also at times, if I'm versing warrior teams, for example, if I open on the kill target, I'll then turn and instantly bash the warrior so that he can't banner and reduce the hunter's trap. Okay, so when you're playing comps like jungle, where it's super important to get the right setup, you need to ensure that you're covering all the bases. Okay, anything that's going to reduce that CC chain is absolutely destructive for you. So the second time, so that was a very long-winded first burst window. The second burst window, you're generally not going to have Feral Frenzy up. So what you might like to do is again, make sure that your dots are all refreshed before doing everything. You're then going to Tiger's Fury, Adaptive Swarm, Berserk, and then just start pumping out as much damage as possible. So when you are berserked, Shred will deal more damage because it is assumed that you're in stealth. Okay, so that's what Berserk does. It causes Rake and Shred to deal damage as though you were stealth, giving your finishing moves a 20% chance per combo point to refund 2 combo points. Also important, when you berserk, you want to make sure that you are reapplying Rake to give it that stealth damage bonus. Okay, when you are berserked, you almost never want to be casting Brutal Slash, just because Shred does so much damage. Outside of berserk, where possible, you always want to use Brutal Slash over Shred. Now, let's go through talents. So in our first row, we're always going to be taking Lunar Inspiration. Lunar Inspiration works really well with our Drought of Deep Focus. I want you to note that I've got this crafted in my neck and I have the wrong stats on it, but that's because I didn't, I wasn't paying attention when I first did it, okay? This is a long time ago. You should be getting it in your chest. You should be putting Verse Mastery on it. Coming into our second row, we're always going to be taking Wild Charge, which is awesome. And it has a few different uses. When you are in a non-shapeshift form, you will fly to an ally's position. Where this is useful is, for example, if you're on Blade's Edge Mountain and your teammate is on top of the bridge, you can actually leave all forms and then leap to the person on top of the bridge, which is a very creative use for that. When you're in bear form, it will charge to someone and root them. So it's good for if you're trying to set up a trap for your hunter or whatever, it's a good way to use it. Generally, you're always going to be using it in cat form though, and that's just basically to catch up to a target. For example, if you've gone to bash the healer and you want to get onto your kill target straight away, you'll cat form and leap onto them. Travel form, leap forward for 20 yards. You generally won't ever be doing your wild charge from travel form, okay? Unless you're really trying to gap it and really trying to get outies, you're just not going to. An aquatic form, I literally, until I just read it, I did not know that did that for travel form, for aquatic form. So that's pretty cool. You learn something new every day. Third row, we are talking about our affinities. So there are two choices here, Guardian Affinity or Resto Affinity. The only time you really take Resto Affinity is when you're playing a double DPS 2s comp where you might need a few extra heals. Okay, but even still, most of the time you're going to be taking Guardian Affinity because Frenzied Regen is too good and Incapacitating Roar is too good. Coming into our fourth row, we're going to be talking Mighty Bash or Mass Entanglement. Mighty Bash is going to be your pick for 90% of games. And the other 10% of games where you're versing a Windwalker monk, Mass Entanglement is usually a little bit better. Mass Entanglement is really disruptive for Windwalker copies, Zwen. So I pretty much always take Mass Entanglement against Windwalker teams. Coming into our 5th row, generally pretty much always play Soul of the Forest. Savage Roar is a really good ability. The only thing is that it's quite clunky. So if you can keep it up, it's good. It can be quite clunky. I don't enjoy using it. And Soul of the Forest is just easier and it's one less button. Feral, as you can probably see, has a lot of buttons. Next up, Brutal Slash is always going to be the lock-in, replaces Swipe, and it strikes up to 5 people. I think it's within, I think it's about 10 yards to be honest. And then coming into our final row, we've got Blood Talons or Feral Frenzy. So Feral Frenzy is pretty much is always the lock-in for Necro Feral because it synergizes so well with our Adaptive Swarm. Now, if you're playing the Night Fae version of Feral, you would be playing Blood Talons, but Feral Frenzy is just MVP for Necrolord and is so far and above. Talking about talents, so there are 2 talents that are pretty, there's 1 talent that's always a lock-in. So Strength of the Wild is the first lock-in. 2 good things about this is that when you're in bear form, you get 15% more health, which is great defensively, but the main reason you want it is because when you are using regrowth on an ally, the initial heal will always have a critical effect, and the cast time of regrowth will be reduced by 50%. So when you are, just healing people, it is super strong. 4 heals is usually enough to top someone, which you can do in about 2 seconds. So this is the talent that makes Feral so good as an off healer. Talking about Wicked Claw. So Wicked Claw's inflicted wounds can now stack up to 2 times and reduces 10% of all healing received by the target per stack and can be applied by rip. And this stacks 2 times, which I think I already said. So Wicked Claws, you will always take this if you are not playing with a class that already has MS. If you're playing with a warrior or a hunter, you will always drop Wicked Claws for something else. But if you are not playing with those classes, you always want to have Wicked Claws. So for example, in 2v2, Wicked Claws is always a lock-in. If you're playing with a healer, that is. Talking about some of our other abilities, Thorns. So anytime the enemy team has a melee that's hits very fast, for example, or just even a double melee, most melee situations, you'll be taking Thorns. Thorns does a shitload of damage. I can't tell you the amount of games where I finish where Thorns is my highest damage. Okay, it's very, very strong, especially against teams that don't have a dispel. So even with teams that do have a dispel, it has high value because it takes people out of the game because they're just trying to dispel Thorns. It can be used defensively, it can be used offensively. If someone swaps to my healer, for example, I'll throw Thorns on my healer, which will make them less likely to commit too much because they're afraid of the damage that Thorns is going to do. Talking about some other talents, we'll get Savage Momentum. Interrupting a spell with Skull Bash reduces the remaining cooldown of Tiger's Fury, Survival Instincts, and Dash by 10 seconds. So this is our main damage ability. This is our main defensive and dash, like just a little bit of speed. This is really, really good when you're killing a target that's casting. So generally against Shadow Priest or Mage or Warlock, I will always take this talent because those are usually the target for us. And it just gives us more consistent damage because, every 15 seconds, you're going to be getting a 10% reduction on some of your key abilities. So super strong. High winds. Cyclone leaves the target reeling, reducing their damage and healing by 30% for 4 seconds. I generally always play this against warrior or warrior ret teams because their damage is just so ridiculously high, and the win condition for us is basically just living their cooldowns, and then they're going to topple over. I'll usually always take high winds just to break up the damage. You could use high winds on a ret during his wings, get 6 seconds of CC, and then have the 4 seconds of reduction. then cyclone him again for 3 seconds, get another 4 seconds of reduction, and just kind of break things up. All right, it's better in my opinion than back-to-back chaining them, and just kind of running out your DRs as soon as possible. Leader of the pack. So leader of the pack is it's a bit of a strange one. Crit is not that important for us. This is like an okay talent. It's pretty much just a talent when you're like, okay, I don't need anything else, I'll just take this. Okay, I always have it locked in, but like when I just walk around the city, but I can't really think of many games where I actually would play it. It's just one of those ones where if you've got nothing else to take, then you could take it. So that is PvP talents. Now let's talk about our covenants. So covenants were the introduction to Shadowlands. You get some cool things through them. This is what's called a conduit tree. So conduit tree, you can put some conduits in there. It gives you some cool damage bonuses. I'm sure you already know that much. As of 9.1, we now have these enhanced conduits. So as we go down the tree, you'll see that the conduits become stronger. So you want to make sure that you have your best conduits in the enhanced slots early on. So starting out first, our best potency conduit is the Carnivorous Instinct. Tiger's Fury damage bonus is increased by 5.1%. It's just a flat damage bonus. It doesn't get any better than that. We're then going to come down to Endurance Conduit. So Well-Honed Instincts is our best defensive conduit. When you fall below 40%, you cast Frenzy Regeneration up to once every 79 seconds. So super, super strong. Like, it is just one of those ones where it's basically a get out of jail free card. The chance of you dying when this procs is very low. So it's just insane. We're then going to come down to our second potency conduit. So Adaptive Swarm increases the periodic effects by an additional 10.2%. This is all going to depend on the level of conduit you have. But Adaptive Swarm, as I mentioned before, is going to be the modifier for our dots, which is going to make them do so much damage. Then we're going to come down to Tireless Pursuit. For 4 seconds after leaving cat form or tribal form, you retain up to 40% of the movement speed. Now, where this is very good is, for example, if you're running along and a mage roots you, you can then come out of the route, and while you're in that global cooldown, you're still moving at full speed. Okay, so I think it's a little bit undervalued, but it's such a good conduit, and it just makes the gameplay a lot more fluid, in my opinion. I'm sure someone will disagree with me. Someone always disagrees on the internet. Now, this is a really big one, Ultimate Form. While channeling Fleshcraft, you were immune to crowd control and you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. If you finish the full channel, you gain 3 seconds of crowd control immunity, during which you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. So this is so powerful because you can use it to avoid CC. All right, if you see that someone's trying to cyclone you so that you can't get the kill, you can just Fleshcraft and then be immune while casting, and then also be immune afterwards. Fleshcraft is honestly just so broken. It's one of the most broken abilities in the game, and I'm almost 100% sure it's going to get nerfed soon. Next, our next potency conduit. So when you are healed by another player, increase your agility by 3.4% for 15 seconds. This can only occur once every 30 seconds. So I have 1640 agility. Let me get my calculator out. 1640 times... Oh, wait. 340 times... Jesus Christ, man. 1640 times 0.03. All right. So basically, you're going to have 50 agility with a 50% uptime. Like, think about a single piece of armor has, like, depending on the piece, between 80 to 100. You're basically getting an extra piece of armor's agility. So this adaptive armor fragment is one of the most underrated conduits in the game, in my opinion. Then you're going to come down to Vicious Trail and get Innate Resolve. Regrowth and Frenzy Regeneration Healing is increased by 18% on yourself. This is awesome defensively. It synergizes with everything else that we have. So that is why we go down this path. Then Kevin's Oozling. So Kevin is summoned for 8 seconds. His attacks cause your enemies to take an additional 6% damage from you, and he periodically grants you an Absorb Shield. Keep in mind that Kevin will stop you from re-stealthing because it will be attacking targets. So you might like to have a Cancel Aura Kevin's Oozling in your stealth macro so that you can get your re-stealths. With Night Elves, this is especially important because you can get your free re-stealth with Shadow Meld and you don't want to waste that. Now, talking about legendaries, there's pretty much one choice for Necrolord Feral. So Drought of Deep Focus is going to be the choice. As I said before, make sure you craft this on your chest. Make sure you're getting Verse and Mastery on it, because our stat priority is Versatility first, then Mastery, then Haste, then Crit. I crafted this quite a while ago, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even look up the stat priority. This was when I first starting Feral. So I just didn't pay attention. I will be crafting it on my chest next week. Now, why is Versatility the best? Because of our set bonus. The damage and healing benefit of Versatility is increased by 40% when in arenas, battlegrounds, and war mode. So this just makes us do 33.28% more damage, and then you add 40% on top of that. So it's just ridiculous. The question will pop up with our versatility numbers coming up and there being secondary stat DR. At which point does versatility not become the best? Pretty much over 40% versatility is when you might like to start aiming towards other stats. Okay, but for this season, there's going to be absolutely no problems. You'll be stacking versatility all the way. You'll be gemming it. You'll be putting it on all your enchants. You'll be doing absolutely everything that you can. Now, have I missed anything? I don't believe I have. So to recap, guys, Feral is a very versatile class. As long as you are keeping up your dots, using your shield walls at the right time, so you got 2 of them, survival instincts and bark skin, you can usually stay pretty offensive. When you need to make sure that you're going into bear. If you see yourself coming off stun DR, you need to make sure that you're in bear before those stuns hit. An add-on I recommend for this is Diminish. So as you can see here in a test mode, I can see my stun DR up here. And then if I know if there's a kidney shot coming in, then I'm going to basically swap straight into bear as soon as that stun is finished. The stun DR is finished. So yeah, cool guys. I don't think that I've missed anything else in this video, but if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer anything. I'll also include a link to my Discord helper where I basically answer any questions for new players. So feel free to come in, say hello. No question's a dumb question. Happy to help. Thanks guys.